Raymond Cho had one rule: never sit with your back to a door. 23 years, 3 hostile takeovers, the rule had held. So when he settled into the corner booth at the Alderman Lounge, 3rd floor of the Harrington Grand, back against the wall, he noticed everything: the chandelier, the sommelier watching table 9 a beat too long, the man who stepped off the service elevator instead of the main one. Then he noticed Taehyun Shim, standing in the corridor beyond the glass partition, completely still. On any other man, that stillness might mean hesitation. On Taehyun Shim, stillness had always meant someone was about to lose something permanent. This was different. He was staring at a woman in a beige housekeeping uniform, 8 months pregnant, pushing a cleaning cart through the hall. Raymond set his glass down, typed one line to his assistant: "Find out who she is." Then he smiled, not because anything was funny, because Taehyun Shim, the man nobody named in public, had just given him the most valuable thing in Chicago's underworld: a weakness. Hey everyone, welcome. Before this story goes any further, drop a comment right now. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I want to know how far this has reached. If you're not subscribed yet, now is the time. Because what's about to unfold inside the Harrington Grand tonight is not the kind of story you walk away from halfway through. Stay with me. This is just the beginning. The SUV pulled up to the Michigan Avenue entrance at 8:43 p.m. No police escort. No announcement. Just a black Cadillac Escalade with tinted windows and plates that, if anyone had run them, would have traced back to a property management firm in Delaware that didn't technically exist. The kind of car that powerful men used when they didn't want to be seen arriving, but still wanted everyone to register that they had. Jae-won-oh stepped out first. He always did. 5 years in Taehyun Shim's employment, and he had developed the practiced efficiency of a man who understood that his entire job was to make the world slightly easier before his employer had to touch it. He opened the rear door, scanned the entrance, assessed the doorman, the bellhop, the couple lingering near the revolving door, nodded once. Taehyun Shim stepped out, 41 years old, a charcoal suit made specifically for him by a tailor in Wicker Park who asked no questions and accepted payment in cash. No tie. The top button open, not because he was relaxed, but because he had learned long ago that looking slightly undone made certain men careless. Taehyun Shim had built his entire empire on other people's carelessness. Sophia Hartwell followed, her hand finding his arm before he could move. A black dress, minimal, precise, the kind that looked effortless until you were standing next to it. On her wrist, the Patek Philippe he had given her in December, $31,000, rose gold. The kind of gift that said, "I value your presence," without committing to anything more specific. She had never pointed out that distinction. "Raymond's already inside," Jae-won said quietly. "Corner table. He brought 2 people." "He always brings 2 people," Taehyun said. He didn't say anything else. He was thinking about Mercer Logistics, a freight company that, on paper, moved goods across the Midwest. In practice, it moved other things, through a network of warehouses in Gary, Indiana, that had never once been inspected by anyone carrying a federal badge. Tonight was the closing dinner. Raymond Cho wanted a photograph and a handshake. Taehyun wanted the signature on page 47 and nothing else. The Harrington Grand received them without ceremony, which was the highest compliment a hotel of this kind could pay. 47 floors of glass and steel. The lobby ceiling rose 22 feet over marble floors that reflected the chandelier above in long, still ripples of light. A floral arrangement of white orchids anchored the center of the room, replaced every 48 hours. A detail Taehyun remembered from the due diligence report the one time he had considered buying this building. He hadn't bought it. Not yet. The main elevator bank was under maintenance. A brass stand directed guests to the secondary elevators via the east corridor through the 22nd floor access hallway. Jae-won adjusted their route. Taehyun followed, pulling up the acquisition terms on his phone, not looking up. He didn't look up until his shoe touched something on the floor. He glanced down. A white plastic band. Hospital bracelet. He picked it up, reflex, the automatic tidiness of a man who noticed everything out of place. He turned it over. Read the print in the thin light of the corridor. Coleman, Zara E. Due date, March 14. He looked up, and Zara Elise Coleman was standing 4 steps away. On the 22nd floor, Zara had been on hour 5 of her shift, 14 rooms. Alone, the other housekeeper assigned to this wing, a woman named Patrice, had called out sick for the 3rd Tuesday in a row. The supervisor had logged it. No one had sent backup. She was 8 months and 9 days pregnant. 6 weeks ago, she had submitted a transfer request. Linen sorting on B2, same hourly wage, less walking. It had gone to Gerald Pruitt, who forwarded it to HR, who sent back a form requesting a physician's note. She had taken the bus on her day off to the Lincoln Park Clinic, paid the $47 copay she couldn't really spare, and obtained the note from Dr. Renata Osi. Resubmitted it. As of this morning, it remained under review. She had stopped checking. The inner heel of her left shoe had worn through at a pressure point that became a burn around hour 4. 3 weeks ago, Darius Cole had cut a square of foam from the breakroom chair and placed it in her shoe before her shift. No note. She found it when she was getting dressed, pressed it in with 2 fingers, said nothing. He said nothing. They had an understanding that required no words. He passed her in the hallway at 8:51 p.m. You good? I'm always good. He looked at her 1 second longer than the question required, then kept moving. She turned back to room 2214, the last room on the east wing, king bed, late checkout, towels on the floor, curtains drawn. She unfolded the fresh-fitted sheet and pulled it over the first corner of the mattress, reached across for the far corner, and did not feel the hospital bracelet slip from the pocket of her apron. It had been there since her last prenatal appointment, white plastic, the kind you were supposed to remove before you left the building. She kept finding it in coat pockets, in the bottom of her work bag, in the cup holder on the bus home at midnight. She had not thought about it since Tuesday. She didn't notice it fall. She was still working the second corner of the sheet when the footsteps stopped in the corridor outside. Not staff footsteps, brisk, purposeful, moving somewhere. Not guest footsteps, loose, searching. These stopped with intention. Zara straightened, walked to the doorway. The man in the corridor was looking down at something small in his palm. The hallway light caught the angle of his jaw, the silver that had threaded into his hair at the temples since the last time she had seen him. 18 months ago, not 8. The charcoal suit, the open collar. The hospital bracelet held between 2 fingers with the careful attention of a man who had just read something he was not prepared for. He looked up. Zara did not look away first. One long, suspended moment, the corridor, the hum of the ventilation above, the distant sound of a door pulling shut 3 rooms down. Taehyun Shim had once remained perfectly still while a man pointed a loaded firearm at the center of his chest. His hands were not still now. Sophia was the first one to speak, not because she understood what was happening. But Sophia Hartwell had spent 34 years filling silences before they could fill themselves, and the one between Taehyun and the woman in the hallway had stretched past 4 seconds, which was 3.5 seconds too long. Is there a problem with the room? She asked. The woman in the beige uniform didn't answer right away. She looked at Sophia the way someone looks at a thing that has arrived at an inopportune moment. Calm, patient, the specific patience of someone who has learned not to spend energy on things that won't matter tomorrow. No problem, she said. Just checking if you needed anything. Sophia looked at her the way she sometimes looked at restaurant menus she found disappointing. Quickly, completely, private verdict already formed. The worn shoes, the apron, the belly pressing against the uniform in a way Sophia registered without acknowledging she had registered it. We're fine, Sophia said then. To Taehyun, we're going to be late. Taehyun didn't move. Sophia's hand was still on his arm. He hadn't acknowledged it in 90 seconds. That more than anything she could have named told her something was wrong. Taehyun? Her voice dropped half a register. Whatever this is, give me a minute, he said. Not a request. Sophia let go of his arm, took 1 step back, said nothing more, because she understood on some level she wasn't ready to examine, that she had just been excused. Zara turned back to her cart. Room 2214's extra pillow needed returning. Room 22 Sun still needed to be logged. These things required her attention. These things were the reason she was on hour 5 of a shift that paid $17.43 an hour, which came to $296.31 for a 17-hour week, which after rent and utilities and the clinic copays left her enough to eat carefully and not much else. She had budgeted this month down to the decimal point. She did not have room in that budget for this. She pushed the cart forward. Zara. She stopped, not because it reached her gently. It didn't. It reached her the way her name always reached her when he said it, like something he'd been holding back, like a door he'd been standing in front of without knocking. She didn't turn around. You're working, steady, professional. The voice she used with every guest on every floor. The voice that meant, I am here to serve you, not to be known by you. Sir. That last word landed between them like a stone dropped into still water. A beat. She heard him step closer. 8 months, he said. I had people looking for you. Zara turned, because that sentence required a response, and a response required facing him. She looked at him directly. She said clearly, Your people found me. That's exactly why I left. The service corridor door was heavy, fire-rated steel. Zara pushed through it without speeding up. The corridor on the other side was narrow and lit by fluorescent tubing, smelling of hot linen and industrial cleaner. She moved her cart along the wall toward the storage closet at the far end. She heard the door open behind her. She did not hurry. Zara, stop, please. The please was new. She didn't remember it as part of his genuine vocabulary. He'd used it in social situations the way people said excuse me when they didn't believe they owed anyone an apology. She had noticed. She had filed it away. She filed many things in the time she had known him. She stopped at the storage closet, began unloading the extra linens, stacking them in order, her back to him. I don't know what you were told, Tae-hyun said, but I need you to hear. I'm on break in 11 minutes, Zara said. If this is a conversation, it can wait 11 minutes. Breakroom, my time, silence. Then, okay. She turned and looked at him under the fluorescent light, flat, honest light that showed everything without softening anything. He looked older than she remembered, not worse, older. The way a person looks when they have been carrying something for a long time without putting it down. She didn't say anything about that. That was when Darius Cole came through the staff entrance at the far end of the corridor. He had come up from the east stairwell on his linen run, moving the route he'd worked for 3 years. He saw Zara. He saw the man standing 6 feet behind her. He read the space between them, the set of her shoulders, the way she held the edge of the cart, and he stopped. He didn't speak. He positioned himself at the corridor entrance, arms loose at his sides. Not a threat, not a performance. Just present the way a wall is present, without needing to announce itself. Tae-hyun looked at him. Darius looked back. It wasn't a confrontation. It was one man communicating clearly to another. I see her. I have been seeing her. I am not leaving this hallway. Gerald Pruitt appeared 40 seconds later, 54 years old. 19 years at the Harrington Grand. He moved through the hotel the way water moves through a system. Invisible until friction occurred, then present immediately. The East Service corridor on 22 had been registering as friction for several minutes. He came through the fire door and read the scene in a single sweep. Guest suit, posture, bearing. 2 housekeeping staff, unusual configurera. Coleman. Not a question. The tone of a man addressing a situation, not a person. Is there an issue here? He did not look at Tae-hyun when he asked. He looked at Zara, as though the presence of a guest in this corridor was something she had caused. No issue, Zara said. Good. Pruitt glanced at her cart, then back at her face. Then, quieter, precise, we've discussed the day shift transfer. You should have followed up with HR directly. Nothing had required that sentence. He said it because Zara Coleman was standing in a service corridor with a guest who had followed her here, and Gerald Pruitt had spent 19 years managing these moments by redirecting attention onto the staff member. Tae-hyun looked at Gerald Pruitt. The look lasted 5 seconds. Gerald Pruitt did not say anything else. Nobody in that corridor understood yet what was actually happening. Sophia thought it was jealousy. J1 thought it was a miscalculation that could be corrected. Gerald Pruitt thought it was a staffing problem with an inconvenient witness. Only Darius Cole understood, because he was the only one who knew what Zara Coleman had survived to be standing here tonight. And he knew that whatever was about to happen next had been building since long before Tae-hyun Shim walked into this hotel. Tae-hyun sent Sophia home in the second car at 9:14 p.m. He didn't explain. He said, I'll meet you tomorrow. He said it with the same tone he used when closing a negotiation, final, without room for appeal. Sophia looked at him for a long moment in the lobby. Then she took the car. He watched it pull away from the Michigan Avenue entrance. Then he went back inside. J1 was waiting near the east elevator bank, hands clasped in front of him, the careful posture of a man who had been rehearsing how to stand for the past 20 minutes. Sweet, Tae-hyun said. They rode up in silence. Room 3107, reserved under one of the Delaware LLCs, was dark when they entered. Tae-hyun didn't turn on the lamps. He sat down at the desk in his jacket and looked at the surface of the table. Then he said, Tell me about 8 months ago. J1 was standing near the door. He didn't move toward a chair. Madame Shim met with her, he said. When? A Wednesday. Early September. I didn't know the details until after. After what? After she was gone. The room was quiet. Outside 47 floors below, Chicago moved through itself without concern for anything happening in this suite. Tae-hyun waited. He had learned a long time ago that silence was the most efficient extraction tool he possessed. Jae-won exhaled slowly. Then he began. It had been a Wednesday morning, the 7th, 9:17 a.m. A cafe in Lincoln Park called Bauer and Crane. Exposed brick, paper cups, the kind of place designed to feel anonymous. Madame Shim had arrived first, corner table, window seat. She had ordered nothing and waited. Zara had arrived at 9:23. She had agreed to the meeting because the message had come from Jae-won's number, which meant she had reasonably assumed it came from Tae-hun. That had been the first deception. Madame Shim had placed a white envelope on the table without greeting. Inside, a single sheet of paper, cream stock, the Shim family letterhead embossed at the top. The language was formal, brief, and unambiguous. It directed the cessation of all contact with Tae-hyun Shim, the vacation of the shared residence on Huron Street within 72 hours, and the termination of all financial arrangements connected to the Shim name. At the bottom, Tae-hyun's seal, pressed in black ink. Official. Real. Zara had read it twice. She had looked up at Madam Shim and said, "He sent you." Madam Shim had said, "He didn't need to. This is a family matter. The seal speaks for the family." Then Madam Shim leaned forward and said very quietly, the sentence Zara had not repeated to anyone. Not to Dr. O.C., not to Darius, not to anyone. A child born outside the bloodline will not be protected by anyone in this organization. Zara had understood. She had understood precisely and completely. She had left the cafe at 9:31 a.m. She had not returned to the apartment on West Huron Street. She had taken what she could carry in one bag and disappeared, not dramatically, but thoroughly, the way a person moves when they have learned that hesitation is its own kind of danger. "She stole my seal," Taehyun said. It wasn't a question. His voice was flat. The particular flatness of a man processing something his mind was already certain of, but his body hadn't yet accepted. "Yes," Jae-won said. "From the office on Wacker. She had access to the storage cabinet. I found out 2 weeks after Miss Coleman left. I told myself." He stopped. "You told yourself what?" Jae-won was quiet for a long moment, then, "That it was handled, that it was done. That surfacing it would only." He stopped again. "Say it. That surfacing it would only cause damage to the organization." The room was quiet again. Taehyun stood up, walked to the window, stood there with his hands in his jacket pockets looking at the city. "Leave," he said. Jae-won left. Taehyun called his mother at 10:58 p.m. She picked up on the second ring. That told him she had been awake. That told him she had been expecting this. "The seal," he said. Not a question, not an accusation. Just the two words, stated like a coordinate, a fixed point that everything else had to be measured from. Madam Shim was silent for 4 seconds. Then she said, "You would have chosen her over everything." Taehyun didn't answer immediately. He stood at the window, the phone pressed to his ear, looking at the orange grid of the city below. A plane crossed the sky from south to north. A distant siren moved and faded. "Over the name," his mother continued. Her voice was even. Not defensive. Explanatory the way a surgeon might describe an incision she had already made. "Over the family structure. Over everything we built. Over everything I gave to you." "Yes," Taehyun said, a pause. "Over all of it," he said. His mother said nothing. He had expected her reasoning. The bloodline, the long view she had always used to justify the short cruelties. She offered none of it. Her silence was its own answer, the answer of someone who had made a calculation and had no interest in pretending otherwise. He ended the call. He set the phone down on the glass surface of the desk. Not hard, gently, deliberately, the way you set down something old and irreplaceable even when you have already decided to leave it behind. The room was dark, the city pressed against the windows. Somewhere below 47 floors down and 4 corridors through the hotel's service infrastructure, Zara Coleman was on the last 20 minutes of her shift. He sat down, pressed both hands flat against the desk, and did not move for a long time. There are betrayals that come from rivals, from competitors who want what you have and act accordingly. You build for those. You account for them. What Taehyun Shim was sitting with in the dark of Suite 3107 was not that. This was the kind of betrayal that had arrived wearing his own name, that had pressed his own seal into paper and handed it to the person he should have protected, that had used everything he had built, everything he had placed into the hands of people he trusted, as the instrument of the damage. There was no plan that accounted for that. He had never thought to build one. The break room on B1 was not a room designed for comfort. 8 plastic chairs, 2 folding tables, a vending machine that hummed at a frequency just below conscious notice but above the threshold of annoyance. The fluorescent tube above the second table had been flickering since November. No one had come to fix it. Zara arrived at 11:23 p.m. She fed 175 ends into the vending machine, 3 quarters, $1 bill, and collected a sleeve of crackers and a cup of chicken broth that the machine called soup. She sat at the second table, her back to the door because the chair nearest the wall was the only one with a backrest that didn't tilt. And being 8 months pregnant, she meant that just stopped tolerating chairs that didn't support her spine at 11 p.m. She had 14 minutes. She opened the crackers, pulled the lid off the broth, looked at neither of them. She was thinking about the bracelet. She had thought about seeing him again every night for 8 months, what she would say, whether she would say anything. The one thing she hadn't prepared for was the bracelet. 11 days in her apron pocket, and it had chosen tonight. The door opened. Taehyun Shim walked in alone. No Jae-won, no jacket. Without it, he looked less like who she had prepared herself for, and more like a man who had been sitting in the dark for an hour and hadn't entirely come back. He sat down across from her, said nothing. Zara ate a cracker, took a sip of broth. Then she reached into the front pocket of her uniform and placed a folded piece of paper on the table between them. It had been folded and unfolded enough times that the creases had gone soft. Cream stock, Shim family letterhead embossed at the top in charcoal gray. She had carried it for 8 months. Not because she needed it, because she had learned long before Taehyun Shim that you keep the evidence. He opened it. She watched his face while he read, the way his jaw set, the way his eyes moved across the seal at the bottom, slowly, carefully, the way you look at something you recognize and wish you didn't. She used the real seal, he said. Yes, I didn't write this. I know that now. He looked up. When did you know? About 3 months ago, when Dr. Osi mentioned she'd treated a patient once whose husband had taken out a protection order, and the paperwork had been forged by a family member. Zara paused. I started thinking differently about what I'd been handed. Taehyun folded the letter back along its original creases, set it to one side. Then Zara placed the second piece of paper on the table. Standard copy paper, slightly crumpled at one corner, printed in the blue and gray header font of Northwestern Memorial Hospital's billing department. The date at the top, August 19th. The itemized total at the bottom, $4,217.83. In the payment column, installment plan, patient responsibility. Taehyun looked at it. Your mother canceled the health insurance, Zara said. 3 days after I left. I didn't find out until I was in the emergency room at 6 months. Preeclampsia scare. The intake nurse ran my card and looked at me. She stopped. She had a specific way of looking at me. I've seen it before in other contexts. I understood what it meant. Taehyun said nothing. I'm not showing you this so you feel guilty, Zara said. I'm showing you because you asked me to trust the structure around you, the people around you, and the structure canceled my insurance 3 days after I was pushed out. She held his. You didn't cancel it. I believe that, but it was canceled. And you didn't notice. For 8 months, Taehyun, you didn't notice. The room went quiet. Not the polite quiet of people being careful with each other. Not the quiet of a pause between sentences. The kind of quiet that arrives when something accurate has been said out loud for the first time. The kind that doesn't invite response, because response would only diminish it. Both of them sat inside it. Taehyun placed the hospital bill on the table beside the letter, gently. The fluorescent tube above them hummed. A cart rolled through the corridor outside, the sound of wheels on concrete, moving slowly, fading to nothing. He did not move for a long time. Do you believe me? He said finally. That I didn't send her. That I didn't know. Zara looked at him across the 2 pieces of paper and the $1.75 cup of broth and the 14 minutes she had been given by a schedule she had not made. I believe you didn't write the letter, she said. I believe you didn't cancel the insurance. I believe your mother acted without your knowledge. A pause. I don't know yet whether I believe that means what you want it to mean. He accepted that. He didn't argue it, didn't try to soften the edges, didn't redirect toward what he needed from her. He just let her words sit exactly where she had placed them. And that, more than any apology she had half-constructed in her imagination over 8 months, told her something about who he was trying to be now versus who he had been then. I want you to stop working, he said. Tonight. No, Zara, 2 weeks, she said. I finish the next 2 weeks. I collect my last full paycheck. I don't leave Darius short-staffed on this floor. He's been covering for me since month 4 and he deserves 2 weeks' notice. She looked at Taehyun directly. Those are my terms. After that, we talk. But on my schedule. He didn't hesitate. Okay, he said. She had expected resistance, had the counter-argument ready, the firm refusal already shaped and waiting. His immediate agreement moved through that preparation, like it wasn't there. She looked at him for a moment. Then she picked up her crackers. She had 9 minutes left on her break. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known from that plastic chair in the B1 break room, was that at 12:06 a.m. Taehyun Shim would make 2 phone calls from the 31st floor. One to his attorney, Dennis Yao. One to Elder Park of the Shim Family Council. By the time Zara clocked out at 3 a.m., what would end Madam Shim's role in the organization permanently was already in motion. The meeting was called for 9 a.m. on a Friday. Shim Holdings, 38th floor, the North Conference Room. Dennis Yao arrived first, documentation already printed. Elder Park and Elder Chung came together and sat without speaking. Jaewon stood near the window and did not sit. Madam Shim arrived at 9:04 a.m. She was dressed carefully. Dark wool coat, hair in order, the composure of a woman who had decided, somewhere between the car and the elevator, that she would not be the one to show her hand first. She sat at the far end of the table. Taehyun placed 3 items on the table in front of him. The letter, cream stock, his stolen seal pressed in black ink. The hospital bill for $217.83, installment plan August 19th. A printed transcript of the phone call timestamped 10:58 p.m. He had asked Dennis to prepare it. Dennis had asked no questions. Taehyun looked at Elder Park, then Elder Chung, then his mother. She used my seal without authorization, he said. She endangered a woman carrying my child. This ends today. 3 sentences. Madam Shim looked at the items on the table. She did not look at Taehyun. She did not offer an explanation, a defense, or a reframing. She straightened slightly in her chair and looked at the middle distance between the window and the wall. That was her answer. Elder Park and Elder Chung would remember this room. not for what was said, for what wasn't, and what that silence meant from a woman who had never before been without a prepared response. The terms were executed within 48 hours. Madam Shim's access codes to all Shim Holdings accounts were deactivated by close of business Friday. Her chairmanship of 3 charitable foundations, the Shim Cultural Fund, the Chicago Korean Heritage Initiative, and the Lakeview Youth Arts Endowment, was formally transferred. Her position as honorary director of the Kwan Shim Cultural Foundation, held for 11 years, was removed from all public-facing documents. A trust was established in the name of Lena Shim Coleman, $3,847,000, held in a managed fund through a firm in Evanston. Zara Coleman named as sole guardian and sole signatory. No cosigner required. Raymond Cho sent a congratulatory message about the baby 2 days after the Mercer closing. Tae-hyun didn't respond. He did instruct Dennis Yao to review the final acquisition documents one more time, and in that review, a clause surfaced. 17% of the Mercer equity quietly redirected to a shell company in Raymond's name. The clause was removed. Raymond Cho lost the 17% and the photograph in a revision that took Dennis 40 minutes. Sophia Hartwell sent a text 3 days later, "I hope she's all right, I mean that." Tae-hyun read it twice. He didn't reply. There was nothing honest to say, and he had decided somewhere in the dark of Suite 3107 that he was done saying things that weren't. Lena arrived on March 16th at 3:07 in the morning. Room 412, Northwestern Memorial Hospital. 7 pounds, 3 ounces, with a full head of dark hair and the expression of someone who had been interrupted. Dr. Renata Osei delivered her. She did not once make Zara feel like an inconvenience, the same way she had never made her feel like one in the Lincoln Park Clinic. In the 3 appointments when Zara had no insurance, and Dr. Osei had charged for a standard visit and written the rest off without comment, Tae-hyun was there. He held Zara's hand and did not let go until she told him to. When Dr. Osei placed Lena on Zara's chest, he did something Zara had never seen in 2 years of knowing him. He cried, quietly, without performance. The way a person cries when they are not trying to manage how it looks. 6 months later, it was a Tuesday in September. Zara's apartment was on the 4th floor of a building on Damen Avenue in Wicker Park. A window seat that looked onto the street, yellow walls in Lena's room, a foam mat that Tae-hyun had assembled incorrectly the first time and silently reassembled the following Saturday when Zara was at class. She was enrolled at the nursing program at Trillo campus, Tuesday, Thursday evenings, Saturday mornings. She had chosen it because of Dr. Renata Osei, because of what it meant to be the person who didn't make someone feel like a burden at the worst moment of their life. Darius Cole had been promoted to housekeeping supervisor for floors 20 through 24. The letter cited his performance record. He had mentioned it to Zara on the phone, proud and slightly suspicious, the way Darius always received good news. She told him he deserved it. She didn't tell him anything else. Madame Shim sent a letter in late August. It arrived in a plain envelope, no return address, handwritten on a single sheet of white paper. No apology, no request. 5 sentences that acknowledged, without elaborate language, what she had done and to whom. Zara read it at the kitchen table, folded it, put it in the drawer under the utility bills, left it there for 22 days. Then she took it out, sat down, and wrote one line on a page from Lena's art pad. "Lena has your eyes. I thought you should know." She didn't wait to feel ready. She sent it because holding it longer would only mean carrying it, and she had decided she was done carrying things that didn't belong to her. It was 3:11 a.m. on a Wednesday when she found him. She had gotten up for water and seen the light from Lena's room, the nightlight shaped like a small cloud that Tae-hyun had bought without being asked. She stopped in the doorway. He was sitting on the floor back against the wall beneath the window, legs stretched out in front of him. Lena was asleep on his chest, face turned sideways, one fist curled under her chin, his hand rested against her back. Not moving, not patting, just there. He was looking at the ceiling. He didn't notice Zara in the doorway. Or he did, and he didn't need to say anything about it. She leaned against the doorframe. Didn't go in. The nightlight made the room amber. The street outside was quiet. Lena breathed in the slow, complete way that only sleeping babies breathe, as if nothing in the world required her attention, because nothing did, because she was held. Zara stayed there for a while. Then she went back to bed. Some things don't need to be said to be true. In a yellow room on the 4th floor of a building on Damen Avenue, a man who had spent his whole life building structures that didn't break sat on a cold floor at 3 a.m. and held the smallest, most important thing he had ever been given. That was enough. If you made it here, thank you. This story stayed with me from the moment I started writing it, not because of the power or the money or the way things fell apart and came back together, but because of Zara, a woman who had every reason to be bitter and chose, instead, to be precise, who kept the evidence not to use as a weapon, but because she had learned that the truth deserves a witness, who set her own terms on her own schedule and did not negotiate herself down. I want to know what stayed with you. Was it the moment in the break room, the hospital bill on the table, and the thing Tae-hun couldn't explain away? Was it Darius Cole standing at the end of that corridor without saying a word? Or was it that last image, a man on a cold floor at 3 a.m. holding something he almost never got to hold? Drop your answer in the comments below. Tell me which moment hit hardest. Tell me what you think Zara got right, and what, if anything, you think she still has left to figure out. And tell me where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I genuinely want to know how far this reached. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't subscribed yet, there are more stories like this one coming. Like this video if Zara earned it, subscribe if you want to be here for the next one, and leave a comment. Because the best part of telling these stories is finding out what they meant to the people who listened.